The night had a strange way of breathing, slow, uneven, like a heart that had forgotten how to hope. Rain traced quiet patterns against the window, each drop slipping down like a memory that refused to stay still. Inside a dimly lit room, Mary sat curled on the edge of her bed, her fingers wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. She didn't notice. She hadn't noticed anything in days. There are moments in life when silence becomes louder than noise, and this was one of them. Mary wasn't always like this. Once she used to laugh without thinking. Her laughter had a softness to it, like wind brushing through autumn leaves. She used to believe in simple things, sunsets, handwritten letters, and the quiet magic of staying. But life has a peculiar way of rewriting people. It started on a morning that looked completely ordinary. The sky was clear, the city was awake, and the world felt untouched. That was the day she met him. His name was Daniel. He wasn't extraordinary at first glance, no dramatic entrance, no cinematic moment. Just a man standing in line at a small bookstore cafe, arguing softly with the barista about whether coffee should taste like comfort or chaos. Mary had smiled, not because it was funny, but because it felt real. Comfort, she had said without thinking, stepping slightly closer. Coffee should taste like comfort. Daniel turned, and just like that, something shifted. There are encounters that don't announce themselves. They don't come with music or warning signs. They arrive quietly, and yet they leave echoes that last a lifetime. "You always give opinions to strangers?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Only when they're wrong," Mary replied. That was the first moment. The first thread in a story neither of them knew they were weaving. Days turned into conversations. Conversations turned into habits. And habits turned into something neither of them dared to name. They started meeting at the same cafe, always by accident, or at least that's what they told themselves. Daniel would bring a book he never really read. Mary would pretend she wasn't looking for him the moment she walked in. "Late again," he said one evening, glancing at his watch. "You're early," she replied, placing her bag down. "Or maybe I just didn't want to miss you." Mary paused. Words have weight. And sometimes they fall exactly where they're meant to. She looked away, hiding the small, dangerous smile forming on her lips. "Careful," she whispered. "You might start sounding like someone who cares." Daniel leaned back, his eyes softer now. "Maybe I already do." And just like that, the air between them changed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was undeniable. Love doesn't always arrive with certainty. Sometimes it grows quietly in the spaces between words, in shared glances, unfinished sentences, and the comfort of someone simply being there. For Mary, it felt like warmth returning to a place that had been cold for too long. For Daniel, it felt like something he didn't deserve. He never said it out loud. But there was a heaviness in him, a quiet distance that appeared without warning, like shadows creeping into sunlight. "Where do you go?" Mary asked one evening. They were sitting by the window, the city glowing outside like 1,000 scattered stars. "When?" he replied. "When you disappear, even when you're right here." Daniel didn't answer immediately. Some truths take time to surface. "Some places," he said slowly, "are hard to leave." Mary studied him. "Then why don't you let someone in?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Because not everyone survives the storm." There was something in the way he said it, something fragile, something broken. Mary felt it. And without realizing it, she stepped closer, not physically, but emotionally, dangerously. "Maybe," she said softly, "you're not as dangerous as you think." Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment his walls cracked. Weeks passed. The world outside continued as it always does, busy, indifferent, moving forward without asking permission. But inside their small universe, time slowed. They began to share pieces of themselves. Mary told him about her childhood, about how she used to write letters she never sent, about how she believed love was something that stayed, not something that left. Daniel listened, and in return he gave her fragments. Not the whole story, never the whole story, just enough to keep her close, but not enough to let her fully understand. "I used to believe in forever," he said one night. "What changed?" Mary asked. He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Reality," Mary frowned. "Or fear?" Daniel didn't answer, because sometimes silence is an answer. It happened on a night that felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your heart uneasy without knowing why. Mary waited at the cafe. 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m., 9 p.m. Daniel didn't come. She checked her phone. No messages, no calls, nothing. And suddenly the world felt different. There's a specific kind of pain in waiting. It's not loud. It doesn't scream. It just sits with you, slowly tightening its grip. Mary stayed until the cafe lights dimmed, until the chairs were stacked, until hope quietly slipped away. The next day he appeared as if nothing had happened. "As usual?" he asked, sitting across from her. Mary stared at him. "Where were you?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "I had things to handle." "No message. I didn't think. That's the problem," she interrupted. "You don't think?" Silence stretched between them, tense, unfamiliar. "I'm not someone you can just disappear on," Mary continued, her voice softer now but sharper. "I'm not temporary." Daniel's expression changed. Something defensive flickered in his eyes. "I never said you were." "You didn't have to." That was the first crack, not in love but in understanding. Love is beautiful, but it's also fragile. And sometimes it breaks not because of big moments, but because of the small ones we ignore. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low. "You're asking for something I don't know how to give." Mary's heart tightened. "And what is that?" "Consistency, clarity, maybe even honesty," she swallowed. "Then learn. It's not that simple." "It is," she whispered. "When you care about someone, you learn." Daniel looked away, because deep down he knew she was right. But knowing something and being able to do it are two very different things. That night Mary walked home alone. The city lights blurred around her, her thoughts heavier than her steps. She realized something then. Love shouldn't feel like confusion. It shouldn't feel like waiting. It shouldn't feel like slowly losing yourself just to understand someone else. And yet, she wasn't ready to let go. Because sometimes the heart holds on even when it knows better. Back in her room, the rain had returned. Soft, persistent, like a memory refusing to fade. Mary sat by the window again, her reflection staring back at her. "Why does it hurt?" she whispered to no one, but deep inside she already knew the answer, because she was falling, and he was still deciding whether to catch her. Some stories don't begin with certainty, they begin with questions. And sometimes, those questions become the very thing that breaks you. The rain didn't stop that night. It lingered, like a feeling that refused to leave, like a sentence that was never fully spoken. Mary didn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every pause, every silence that had grown between her and Daniel. It's strange how the mind works, how it clings to the smallest details when the heart feels uncertain. Consistency, clarity, honesty, his words echoed in her chest, not because he said them, but because he couldn't give them. Morning arrived, but it brought no comfort. The world outside moved forward as if nothing had changed. Cars passed, people laughed. Life continued in its careless rhythm, but inside Mary something felt displaced. She reached for her phone. No messages, not even a simple good morning. She stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then slowly placed it back down. There's a quiet kind of disappointment that doesn't break you immediately. It just stays. 3 days passed. No calls, no explanations, no Daniel. At first, Mary told herself he was busy, then she told herself it didn't matter. And eventually, she stopped telling herself anything at all. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need words. It shows up in absence. On the 4th day, she went back to the cafe, not because she expected him, but because some habits are harder to break than hearts. The bell above the door chimed softly as she entered. The familiar smell of coffee wrapped around her, warm and distant, like a memory she couldn't quite reach anymore. She chose the same table by the window, the same seat, the same view. Everything was the same, except him. "Your usual," the barista asked gently. Mary nodded, and for a moment she almost said his order too, but she stopped herself, because reality has a way of reminding you where you stand. "Still waiting for someone?" The voice caught her off guard. Mary looked up to see a man standing nearby, holding a cup of coffee and a quiet smile. He looked familiar, but not in the way Daniel did. This was different, calmer. "I used to," she replied. The man nodded as if he understood more than she had said. "Mind if I sit?" Mary hesitated. There's always a moment, right before you let someone new into your space, where you question everything. Then she gestured to the chair. "Go ahead." He sat down, placing his cup carefully on the table. "I'm Adrian," he said. "Mary." There was a brief silence, but unlike the silence with Daniel, this one didn't feel heavy. It felt neutral. "Bad timing?" Adrian asked, noticing the distant look in her eyes. Mary let out a soft breath. "Or maybe the right timing," she said quietly. He didn't push further, and somehow that made her feel safe. They didn't talk much that day. Just small things, weather, books, coffee preferences, nothing deep, nothing complicated. And yet Mary felt something she hadn't felt in days. Ease, no confusion, no guessing. No emotional weight hiding behind simple words. It was refreshing, but also unfamiliar, because when you're used to storms, calm can feel strange. Later that evening, as Mary stepped out of the cafe, she saw him, Daniel, leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, eyes searching for her. Her heart reacted before her mind could. That's the dangerous thing about love, it doesn't ask for permission. Mary, his voice was soft, but it carried urgency. She stopped, not too close, not too far. Where were you? She asked. No anger this time, just quiet exhaustion. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. I needed space. Mary's lips parted slightly. Space, she repeated. Yes, and you couldn't tell me that? I didn't think you'd understand. A faint, almost invisible smile touched her lips. Did you ever give me the chance to try? Daniel didn't answer, because the truth was uncomfortable. I saw you, he said after a moment. Mary frowned. When? Inside with him, Adrian, so he noticed. And, she asked, Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. I didn't like it. Mary let out a quiet laugh, not mocking, just tired. That's interesting. What is? You disappear for days without a word, she said, her voice steady now, and somehow you still expect me to sit here and wait like nothing matters. That's not what I... Then what do you expect, Daniel? Silence. Again, always silence. There was something different about Mary now, not louder, not colder, just clearer, and Daniel felt it, the shift, the distance that hadn't been there before. I'm trying, he said quietly. Mary looked at him. Really looked at him, and for the first time she saw the truth. Trying wasn't the same as choosing, and love needed to be chosen every single day. I don't need perfect, she said softly. I just need real. Daniel stepped closer. I am real. Then stop making me feel like I'm not. That line stayed between them, heavy, unavoidable. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of rain again. It felt like something was about to change, maybe not dramatically. But enough. I don't know how to do this, Daniel admitted. Mary's eyes softened for a brief moment. Then learn or let me go. Those words weren't meant to hurt, but they did, because sometimes the truth cuts deeper than lies. Daniel looked at her as if he was standing at the edge of something he didn't fully understand, something he was afraid to fall into. Why are you still here? He asked. Mary blinked. What? Why haven't you left? She hesitated. Because that question had more than one answer. Because, she started, then stopped. Because I care. Because I see something in you. Because I'm not ready to lose this. But instead, she said, because I hoped you'd stay. Daniel's expression shifted. Just slightly, but enough. Hope, it's a beautiful thing, but it's also dangerous. Because when it's placed in the wrong hands, it becomes the very thing that breaks you. I'll try, Daniel said. Mary didn't respond immediately. Not because she didn't hear him, but because she wasn't sure if she believed him. And belief, once shaken, is hard to rebuild. That night they walked together, not holding hands, not too close, but not completely apart either. A strange, undefined distance, like two people trying to find their way back to something they never fully understood. Behind them, unnoticed, Adrian stood by the cafe window watching, not with jealousy, not with anger, but with a quiet awareness, as if he already knew something they didn't, as if he understood that some stories don't get better, they just get deeper, and sometimes deeper means more painful. The night carried a strange stillness, the kind that settles before something breaks. Mary walked beside Daniel, their footsteps echoing softly against the empty pavement. The city lights flickered around them, glowing like distant memories, beautiful but untouchable. Neither of them spoke, because sometimes silence says more than words ever could. Days passed, and for a while things felt different. Daniel tried, or at least it looked like he did. He texted more. He showed up on time. He stayed a little longer than usual, as if he was learning how to exist in a space that required consistency. Mary noticed. Of course she did. When you care about someone, you notice even the smallest changes. You're trying, she said one afternoon, her voice carrying a quiet warmth. Daniel smiled faintly. I told you I would. There was something soft in that moment, something hopeful, like a fragile thread slowly being stitched back together. But healing isn't always linear, and effort doesn't always mean understanding. One evening they sat at their usual table. Rain tapped gently against the glass, the same rhythm that had once felt comforting. Now it felt uncertain. Tell me something real, Mary said suddenly. Daniel looked up. Real? Yes, something you've never told anyone. He leaned back slightly, his expression shifting. Why? Mary's fingers traced the edge of her cup. Because I'm tired of feeling like I'm only seeing parts of you. Daniel didn't respond immediately. The question lingered between them, heavy, unavoidable. Some things, he began slowly, aren't meant to be shared. Mary's heart sank, but she didn't show it. Or maybe, she said quietly, you just don't trust me enough. That's not fair. Isn't it? Daniel exhaled, frustration flickering beneath his calm exterior. I'm here, aren't I? I'm trying. Mary met his eyes. And I'm still waiting. That was the problem. He thought presence was enough. She needed depth. I had someone once, Daniel said suddenly. Mary stilled. His voice was different now, quieter, more distant. Her name was Alina. The name hung in the air like a ghost. He paused, searching for words. She was everything I thought I needed. Mary listened, carefully, because this was the part of him he never showed. What happened? She asked gently. Daniel's gaze drifted to the window. She left. Simple words, but the pain behind them was anything but simple. Why? He smiled faintly. Because I wasn't enough. Mary's chest tightened. No, she said softly, that's not true. Daniel looked at her. You don't know that. Maybe not, she admitted, but I know what it feels like to think that. There was a moment, brief, fragile, where their pain felt shared, connected. But it didn't last. After her, Daniel continued, I stopped believing in things that stay. Mary swallowed. And now, he hesitated, then said something that shouldn't have hurt but did. I don't know. I'm not her, Mary said quietly. I know. Then stop loving me like I'm going to leave. Daniel's eyes darkened slightly. And stop expecting me to stay like she did. The words landed wrong, twisted, sharp, because love shouldn't feel like comparison. That night ended differently. Not with laughter, not with soft smiles or lingering glances, but with distance, unspoken, growing. The next few days felt off. Daniel's efforts started fading, not all at once, just slowly, like a candle losing its flame. Late replies, short conversations, missed calls, Mary noticed everything. She always did. But this time she didn't say anything, because she was tired of asking for what should come naturally. Instead, she found herself at the cafe more often. And somehow, Adrian was there too, not intentionally, not obviously, just present. Rough day? He asked one evening, sliding into the chair across from her. Mary gave a small, tired smile. Is it that obvious? He shrugged lightly. You look like someone who's thinking too much and saying too little. She let out a soft laugh. That's surprisingly accurate, Adrian nodded. Most people don't listen long enough to notice. Mary studied him. There was something different about Adrian. He didn't rush conversations. He didn't push. He just stayed. And sometimes that was enough. Can I ask you something? He said after a moment. Mary nodded. Why do you look sad even when you smile? The question caught her off guard because it wasn't casual. It was real. I guess, she started, then paused. Some things don't leave just because you want them to. Adrian didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it, just listened. And for some reason, that felt rare. You deserve something easy, he said quietly. Mary frowned slightly. Easy? Yes, he replied. Not confusing, not inconsistent, not something that makes you question your worth. Her heart shifted at those words. Because deep down, she knew he was right. That evening as she walked home, her phone buzzed. Daniel, I miss you. Two simple words, but they felt complicated. Mary stared at the screen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. What do you say to someone who only misses you when you start to drift away? I'm tired, she typed. Then paused, deleted it, rewrote. I'm here, sent, because even now she wasn't ready to let go. Later that night, Daniel called. I feel like you're slipping away, he said, his voice quieter than usual. Mary closed her eyes. Maybe I am. Why? The question felt almost ironic. Because I can't keep holding on to something that doesn't hold me back. Silence. Then I do care about you. Mary's lips trembled slightly. I know, she whispered, and that was the problem. Care wasn't enough anymore. Then stay, Daniel said. Mary opened her eyes. Tears blurred her vision, but her voice remained steady. Give me a reason to? Daniel didn't answer, not immediately. And in that pause, something inside Mary shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, because sometimes it's not the goodbye that breaks you. It's the moment you realize they were never really holding on the way you were. Across the city, under the same quiet sky, Adrian stood by his window, staring at his phone. Mary's name on the screen. He didn't call, didn't text. He just watched, because some people don't chase. They wait, not out of weakness, but out of understanding. And somewhere between love and letting go, Mary was standing at a crossroads. One path led to something familiar but painful. The other to something unknown, but possibly peaceful. And the hardest part, she didn't know which one her heart would choose. The city felt heavier that night, as if it knew something was about to end, or perhaps something was about to begin. Mary stood by her window again, same place, same silence, but she wasn't the same. There was a shift inside her now, subtle, quiet, but undeniable, not the kind that screams, the kind that settles. Her phone lay beside her, no messages, no calls, and for the first time she didn't reach for it. Because something had changed, she wasn't waiting anymore. Morning came gently. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, touching her face like a hesitant promise. Mary opened her eyes slowly, and instead of heaviness, there was calm, not happiness. Not yet, but calm was a beginning. She went to the cafe not for Daniel, not even for Adrian, but for herself, and that was new. The bell chimed softly as she entered. The same warmth greeted her, but this time it didn't feel tied to anyone else. She chose a different table, not by the window, not the one filled with memories, a new place. A small change, but a powerful one. Trying something new, Mary looked up, Adrian standing there with that same quiet presence. She smiled faintly. Maybe I am. He nodded, sitting across from her, but not too close, not too familiar. I like it, he said. It suits you? Mary raised an eyebrow slightly. What does? Choosing yourself. The words landed softly but deeply, because sometimes we don't realize how much we've been abandoning ourselves until someone points it out. They talked. Not about love, not about pain, just simple things. And yet, there was something meaningful in that simplicity. No pressure, no expectations, just presence. Do you ever feel like you stayed too long somewhere you were only meant to pass through? Mary asked suddenly. Adrian thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes. And why didn't you leave? He smiled faintly. Because I believed it might turn into something more. Mary looked down at her hands. That sounds familiar. Sometimes, Adrian continued, we don't fall in love with people. Mary glanced up. We fall in love with the version of them we create in our minds. The truth in those words was undeniable and painful. Later that day, Mary saw Daniel, standing outside the cafe again. But this time, she didn't feel that immediate pull, that rush, that instinct to run toward him. Instead, she walked, slowly, calmly, like someone who finally understood her own worth. Mary, he called. She stopped, turned, but didn't move closer. There was something different in her eyes, and Daniel noticed immediately. You look different, he said. Mary tilted her head slightly. Do I? Yes. How? He hesitated. Distant. Mary let out a soft breath. Or maybe just clear. Daniel stepped forward. I've been thinking, Mary smiled faintly. That's new. He almost laughed, but didn't, because he knew he deserved that. I don't want to lose you. The words came out quickly, almost desperately. And for a moment, the old Mary would have softened, but this Mary, she stayed still. You never really had me, she said gently. Daniel's expression faltered. That's not true. Isn't it? Her voice wasn't angry, it wasn't cold, it was honest, and honesty can be brutal. I was there, she continued. I gave you everything I could, but you were never fully there with me. Daniel looked down, because deep inside he knew she was right. I'm trying now, he said quietly. Mary nodded. I can see that. Then why does it feel like it's too late? She paused, because that question mattered. It's not about time, she said softly. Then what is it? Mary looked at him, really looked at him. It's about how many times I had to feel alone while standing right next to you. The words sank deep, too deep. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, frustration and regret mixing in his expression. I didn't know, Mary shook her head gently. You did, you just didn't think it would matter this much. There was silence again, but this time it wasn't confusing, it was final. I love you. The words came suddenly, unexpectedly. And for a brief moment, time seemed to pause. Mary's heart reacted. Of course it did. Love doesn't disappear that easily, but something else stood stronger now. Clarity. She stepped closer, just enough. Maybe you do, she said softly. Then stay, Mary smiled, a sad, beautiful smile. Love shouldn't feel like something I have to survive. Daniel's eyes filled with something he hadn't shown before, fear, loss, regret. I can change, he said. Mary's expression softened, just slightly. I believe you. Hope flickered in his eyes. Then, but I can't wait for you to become someone I needed you to be from the beginning. And just like that, hope faded. Sometimes love ends not because it disappears, but because one person finally chooses themselves. Mary took a step back, and this time she didn't look back. Daniel stood there watching her walk away. And for the first time, he understood what it meant to lose something real, not because it wasn't there, but because he didn't hold it when he had the chance. Inside the cafe, Adrian looked up as Mary walked in. There was a quiet question in his eyes. She answered it with a small, genuine smile, and that was enough. He didn't ask what happened, didn't need to, because sometimes healing doesn't need explanations, just space. And someone who doesn't make it harder. Coffee? He asked. Mary nodded. Yes, but make it taste like comfort. Adrian smiled. I always do. And for the first time in a long while, Mary felt something light, not overwhelming. Not intense, just peaceful. But life isn't always kind enough to end stories gently, because just when you think everything is settling, something unexpected arrives. That evening, Mary received a message, unknown number. Her heart skipped just slightly. She opened it, and what she read changed everything. Tell Daniel the past doesn't stay buried forever. Mary's breath caught. Her fingers trembled slightly. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about something deeper, something hidden, something dangerous. And far away, Daniel stared at his phone, the same message, the same words. And for the first time in a long time, he looked afraid. Not of losing Mary, but of something catching up to him, because some stories don't just break hearts. They reveal truths that were never meant to surface. The message didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt like a door opening to something that had been waiting in the dark. Mary stared at her phone, her heartbeat slow but heavy, like each second carried a weight she didn't yet understand. Tell Daniel the past doesn't stay buried forever. The words lingered, sharp, unsettling, and somehow familiar in a way she couldn't explain. Across the city, Daniel stood frozen, his screen glowing faintly in the dim light of his apartment. Same message, same words, but for him they weren't mysterious, they were a warning. "No," he whispered under his breath, running his hand through his hair, pacing like a man cornered by something invisible. Because the past he had buried was never truly gone. The next morning felt different, not calm, not peaceful, but tense like the air before a storm. Mary didn't go to the cafe. For the first time in weeks, she chose distance. Not just from Daniel, but from everything that felt uncertain. Yet uncertainty has a way of finding you even when you try to hide from it. Her phone rang, unknown number. Again, she hesitated, then answered. "Hello," silence. Soft breathing on the other end. Then, "You should stay away from him." A woman's voice, cold, measured. Mary's grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" A pause, then, "Someone who knows what he did." The line went dead. Mary stood there, her thoughts colliding. What he did, Daniel. The same Daniel who struggled to express love, who avoided depth, who carried pain like a shadow. What could he possibly be hiding? Later that day, she went to see him. Not out of love, not out of habit, but for truth. Daniel opened the door slowly. His eyes met hers, and in that moment she saw it, fear, real fear. "You got the message," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Mary stepped inside. Closed the door behind her. "Yes." Silence stretched between them, thick, unavoidable. "Who is she?" Mary asked. Daniel looked away. "That's not important." Mary's expression hardened slightly. "It is to me," he exhaled sharply. "You shouldn't be involved in this." A bitter smile touched her lips. "That choice was yours to make before I cared." The truth hit, hard. Daniel leaned against the wall, his shoulders tense. "She's from my past." Mary waited. Because this time, fragments weren't enough. "Her name is Alina." The name again, but this time it felt different, darker. "You said she left," Mary whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "She did. Then why does it feel like she's still here?" "Because she is." The unspoken answer hung between them. "I didn't tell you everything," Daniel admitted. Mary crossed her arms. "I know. She didn't just leave," he continued, his voice low. "She disappeared." Mary's breath caught slightly. "Disappeared?" "Yes," the word echoed, heavy, unsettling. "What does that mean?" Mary asked. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "It means no one knows where she is." A chill ran through Mary. "And you think this is her?" "No," he opened his eyes. "This is someone who wants me to think about her." Mary stepped closer. "Why?" Daniel hesitated. "Because the answer wasn't simple. Before she left, we had a fight," he said. "What kind of fight?" "The kind that changes everything." Mary's voice softened, but only slightly. "What happened, Daniel?" He looked at her. And for the first time, he didn't hold anything back. "She found out something about me," he said quietly. Mary's heart tightened. "What?" Daniel swallowed. "I wasn't who she thought I was." The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "What does that mean?" Mary pressed. Daniel's gaze dropped. "I made mistakes, bad ones. I got involved in things I shouldn't have." Mary felt a slow, creeping fear. "What kind of things?" Silence. "Then things that don't just disappear." Mary took a step back, because suddenly this wasn't just about love. This wasn't just about emotional distance. This was something else, something dangerous. "Did you hurt her?" Mary asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's head snapped up. "No," too quickly, too sharply, and that said everything. "I didn't hurt her," he repeated, more controlled now. "But I didn't protect her either." Mary's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means," he struggled for words, "I let her walk into something she didn't understand." Tears filled Mary's eyes, but they didn't fall. "Daniel," her voice broke slightly. "Who are you?" That question, it wasn't about his past anymore, it was about everything. Daniel stepped forward, but she stepped back, because some truths create distance you can't ignore. "I was trying to leave that life," he said. When I met you," Mary let out a quiet, disbelieving breath. "So I was just what, your escape?" "No," he said quickly. "You were the reason I wanted to change." But even that didn't feel right, because love shouldn't come with shadows this dark. Mary shook her head slowly. "I thought you were broken," she said, her voice trembling. But this is something else. Daniel didn't argue because he couldn't. I never wanted you involved, he said softly. Mary looked at him, really looked at him, and in that moment she realized something painful. Sometimes the person you love isn't just emotionally unavailable. They're carrying a life you were never meant to be part of. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time a picture. Mary's hands trembled as she opened it. It was Daniel. With Alina, but not the way he described. They weren't distant, they weren't broken, they looked happy. And then another image, blurry, dark, a street, an argument, Alina walking away, and behind her a shadow, Mary's breath caught. Daniel, her voice was barely there. He looked at the screen, and everything inside him collapsed. They're watching, he whispered. Who? Mary asked, panic rising now. Daniel's eyes met hers, and this time there was no hiding. No one you should ever have been connected to. The room felt suffocating. The love of the memories, the moments they shared, everything felt fragile now, uncertain. I can't do this, Mary said suddenly, not loudly, not dramatically. But with finality, Daniel stepped forward. Mary, she shook her head, tears finally falling. I loved you, she said, her voice breaking, and maybe part of me still does. That truth hurt more than anything. But love shouldn't feel like fear. Silence. Then, it shouldn't feel like I'm standing in the middle of something I don't understand, something that could destroy me. Daniel's expression shattered, because this time he knew. There was no fixing this. Mary stepped back toward the door, her hand on the handle, her heart heavy but clear. Some stories, she whispered, aren't meant to last. And then she left. Outside, the rain had started again, soft, relentless, like everything she was feeling. Across the street, a car sat in the shadows, engine running, watching, waiting. Mary walked forward, not looking back, not stopping. Because sometimes, the only way to survive a story is to leave it behind. And Daniel, he stood alone, finally understanding that some pasts don't just follow you, they catch up. And when they do, they don't just take everything you have, they take everything you could have had. Days later, Mary sat by a different window, in a different place. A quiet corner of a new cafe. Adrian sat across from her, not asking questions, not pushing, just there. You okay? He asked softly. Mary looked at him. Her eyes still carried sadness, but beneath it there was strength. I will be, she said, and for the first time she meant it. Because sometimes love doesn't end with a happy ending. Sometimes it ends with a lesson, a scar. A quiet strength you didn't know you had. And sometimes, walking away is the bravest love story of all.